Hey guys, it's Marley. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be doing my October reading wrap up. So let's talk about all the books I read in the month of October. It was one of my better reading months, so that's very exciting. First of all, let's go through the stats before we get into the individual book reviews. So I ended up reading 12 books this month, which other than January is my best reading month that I've had in 2024. That amounted to about 4,442 pages. My average rating was a 3.79, so almost a 4-star rating, which is pretty good. Books acquired was 2, so I bought 2 books, and Own Voices was 2. In terms of the genres, it's a little bit mixed. Obviously, I was trying to prioritize spooky books for October and Halloween, but it ended up being thriller and horror, both at 4 books each, which makes sense, 3 fantasy books, and then 1 romance book. In terms of the format that I read these books in, it was 8 ebooks and then 4 physical books. In terms of the audience, as you can imagine with reading so many like spooky horror books, it was mostly adult books that I read. So 10 of the books I read were adult, and then only 1 middle grade and 1 YA. For author gender, I read from 10 female authors and then 2 male authors this month. I'm honestly a little surprised there wasn't more male authors, but honestly love to see it. And then in terms of author status, so whether I've read from the authors before or not, it's actually really nice to see that I actually read from 7 brand new authors to me this month and only 5 repeat authors. I feel like normally the repeat authors is the higher number, so it's good to see that I was branching out and reading from different authors. In terms of year published, as usual, it's kind of all over the map, where I did read 3 books that came out this year, so newer releases, 1 from last year, 2 from 2022, 2 from 2021, and then 2 from 2018, 1 from 2017, and then the oldest was 1 from 2004. Now we can get into the book reviews. Normally I talk about them in the order of like my favorite book to my least favorite book, but this month I kind of want to do it differently and just talk about the books in the order that I read them. I think because I read more than I usually do, I think it'll just be easier for me to like recall the books if I'm talking about them in the order that I consumed them, and then it can be a little mystery of what the ratings are going to be because you don't know that I'm going in a certain order. So starting out, the first book that I read this month was Wrath of the Triple Goddess by Riordan. This is the second book in his like new Percy Jackson series that he started, which is called the Senior Year Adventures. And basically the premise of this mini series within the Percy Jackson series is that Percy is trying to get into, I think it's a New Rome College or something, basically the demigod college, but they don't want to let him in until he has 3 letters of recommendations from gods. So in the first book he got his first letter, and in the second book he's trying to get his second letter of recommendation so that he can go to college. And of course we're gonna have one more book where he gets his third and final letter. I ended up rating this one 3.5 stars, and you can see my full kind of in-depth thoughts in a reading blog that I uploaded this month. It was non-spoilery, so if you don't want to be spoiled you can still watch that blog. But in terms of my quick little review, in this particular book Percy is approached by the goddess Hecate. I know I was pronouncing that wrong before, but I'm pretty sure it's Hecate, and she's basically the goddess of Halloween and witchiness and all that kind of stuff. So it was perfect to read this book in October, the month of Halloween, because it was very, very focused on Halloween. Basically, Hecate wants Percy and his friends to pet sit her pets while she is away. And of course, she doesn't have just regular pets. She has a hellhound and what is the other one? A polecat. And so they're not like your typical pets. And so of course things go wrong. They end up having to look all over the city for her pets when they escape. And it's all leading up to Halloween when Percy and his friends are going to host a Halloween party. I don't love that Rick is continuing the Percy Jackson series. It's just very much feeling like a money grab. That's definitely what it is, and it's kind of like a marketing ploy for the TV show. That being said, I do have like some nice nostalgic feelings for this series. I do still always enjoy Rick's writing and his humor, even though this did feel a little bit on the immature side. There were definitely some jokes that were not working for me, and some of the characters are just kind of not acting like their typical selves. Percy, he is constantly putting himself down, which really bothers me, and just like idolizing Annabeth and acting like she's perfect and can do no wrong. Like there's so many things that are bugging me about these newer books. But that being said, I just think this was a fun time if you can like not take it too seriously. I honestly think like the really huge Percy Jackson fans probably wouldn't like this because of all of those issues I was mentioning of the characters being different, and I know people have mentioned there's plot holes and stuff like that. So I think the really big fans probably wouldn't like this, but I can kind of like check check myself out a little bit. I read the original series, you know, like 15 years ago. I just kind of read it for like a goofy fun time, but there's definitely a lot of like flaws in these newer books. Next up, I did a witchy reading vlog, which is on my channel. I'll link it below in case you missed it, but basically I read 3 witchy books for the month of October, and I also vlogged my experience traveling to Salem, Massachusetts, where of course that was the location of the Salem witch trial. So you can go watch that vlog for all the witchy vibes and see my trip and stuff. Spoiler alert, this vlog went really well, and I really adored all 3 of these books. So the first one I read was A Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandanna. This is following the witch named Micah Moon. The fact that I actually remember her name just shows how much she kind of like stuck with me, and that she has a cute name. But basically she is a witch living in the UK, and in this world witches of course have to keep their identities a secret, and it's also dangerous for witches to kind of group together in one spot because their power can be a little bit unpredictable and stuff like that. So Micah has a very like isolated life, not a lot of connections, especially not with a lot of other witches, so that can be quite lonely. So to deal with that, she creates this kind of persona online, like a YouTuber kind of thing, where she's pretending to be a witch, but in reality like she actually is a witch. So that's how she's able to kind of live out her witchy life, because this group of people finds her channel and thinks she really is a witch, and so they end up recruiting her to come help them, because at this estate they are raising these 3 young witches and they need a fellow witch to come and help tutor these witches, teach them about their magic and protect them. So she ends up going over there and living with them, and it's this whole kind of found family situation. It's a very cozy, fun book. It's great for October because of the witchiness, but I also think it'd be perfect for any season, honestly, because it's more just like a cozy fantasy, found family. There's a really adorable romance. Such a wonderful book. So I rated this one 4 stars, and I highly recommend it. The next witchy book I read was The Ex Hex by Erin Sterling. Absolutely love this book as well. This is about a main character who is a witch. I think her name is Vivi, and at the beginning of the book we see that she are heartbroken by this male witch named Reese, and she ends up, you know, crying to her cousin, and they decide to do this like hex on Reese. They don't even think it really worked. They were just kind of goofing around one night, and then we skip in time years later. Vivi and Reese have not seen each other, but he finally is coming back to town for a certain reason, and when he gets to town the hex kind of just hits him. The curse hits him, so we find out it really was a real curse that they had put on him, and so that starts affecting his magic. It starts affecting the town. It's like a really fun premise where Vivi and Reese are trying to save the town from this magic that is going wrong and this curse that's like affecting all these things in the town, and in the process they're obviously like falling back in love and like a second chance romance kind of trope. I just thought this was such a fun book that really felt like some sort of rom-com movie or like Halloween movie that you would see, like Halloween Town or Hocus Pocus or something like that. Probably my biggest issue with it was that the characters were really horny, is the best way to explain it. The romance I wish couldn't have been so focused on like the sexual attraction, more focused on like just generally their connection and being more of like a deeper bond. But that being said, still a super fun time, and I hope to continue this series because it's actually a series of books. The next or the last witch book I read was Cackle by Rachel Harrison. Another book I absolutely adored and gave 4 stars. This is about a woman named Annie, and she has been in this long-term relationship with this man. They live in New York together. She really thought she was going to end up with this person, and then he breaks up with her, and so her whole world is turned upside down. She decides to move to this small town, gets a new job there. She's a teacher. As she's like adjusting to this new town, she meets this other woman named Sophie, and Sophie is just this beautiful woman, seems to have it all together. They start becoming friends, but Annie realizes that the whole town acts really weird around Sophie. They seem like they're kind of scared of her, and it ends up seeming like maybe Sophie is a witch, like maybe she has powers or something like that, and that's why everyone is so scared of her. So we're exploring this concept as Annie and Sophie get closer. It's really a character study on Annie, how she transforms and changes throughout this book and grows, and a lot of commentary on kind of like how society views women and how they only have real value if, you know, they're in a relationship, becoming a mother, stuff like that. And I've heard Rachel Harrison's really good at doing a lot of commentary like that in her other books too, so I'm so excited to keep reading from her. But this was a really good one, really easy, quick read. It's, I think, described as horror. I wouldn't say it's really that horrific. They say cozy horror, so yeah, I guess I'd call it a cozy horror or even just a fantasy. But overall, absolutely loved all 3 of these witchy books and highly recommend them to you. And if you have any witchy recommendations for me that have similar vibes to these books, please let me know down below. All right, then the rest of the month I really did try to focus on some thriller and horror books that have been on my TBR. The first off, we have The Midnight Feast by Lucy Foley. I have read all of her books. They tend to all be kind of like murder mysteries, whodunit kind of books. So in this situation, we have this like new hotel resort that has opened up in this small town or like the middle of nowhere in the UK. It is the opening weekend and we're following a number of different people during this opening weekend at the hotel. We know that someone is going to end up dead. We're kind of just leading up to that, seeing, you know, the owner of the hotel and her husband's point of view, seeing this mysterious guest's point of view, seeing the point of view of some other people who work at the hotel, and it's all sort of coming together to see what murder and chaos is going to end up happening. We also have some flashback scenes going on where we're finding more about these characters, like origins, and how some of these characters are connected and knew each other before the launch of this hotel. I give it a 3.5 star rating. It's definitely not my favorite Lucy Foley. Still think that her writing can be pretty easy to read, easy to get through. She has really short chapters. There is, you know, this just ominous vibe throughout. There was almost like a supernatural vibe to it, or I wondered if it was going to go in that direction of like paranormal, which kind of kept me intrigued. But I just feel like the reveals were so kind of like drawn out that there never really felt like some huge plot twist. None of it really seemed surprising as we were learning about these characters and how unlikable they were and how evil a lot of them were, that then I wasn't really surprised when like they did evil things later, because we always knew they were evil like basically from the start. So I don't know, not my favorite, but still worth, you know, maybe reading and checking out from the library, but not a must read in my opinion. Another book I ended up reading and also giving 3.5 stars was Foe by Iain Reid. Unfortunately, I did feel like I had a lot of kind of mid reads this month once I was done with reading the witchy books, which I really liked. But Foe was described as a horror book, but again, I didn't really find there was a lot of like horror aspects to this. Maybe it's just that I'm not used to reading a lot of horror, so maybe I don't quite understand the genre yet, but it read more just like a literary fiction sci-fi book to me. Basically, this is about a husband and wife pair. They live on a farm kind of in the middle of nowhere, and then this man shows up saying that the husband, Junior, is getting chosen to go into space for this special assignment kind of thing, and hen is going to be left, the wife hen is going to be left on the farm, but she's not going to be left alone. Like, they're going to take care of her. And I don't really want to say more than that because not a lot happens in the actual plot and arc of this book, so I feel like saying too much could like give things away. But we're mostly just hearing from Junior's point of view. He's, you know, nervous about leaving his wife, and it's very just like focused on their relationship, and there's just this mysterious tone to it because you don't know what's going on. Anyways, I felt like the kind of ending twist wasn't super shocking. I think it was, you know, maybe not something I was 100% sure of, but it was something I had considered, you know, throughout the book. I guess it's just trying to make commentary on marriage and then relationship between men and women and how people change, and you know, it has the sci-fi element in there. I don't know, it was just kind of a mid read for me. I definitely enjoyed his other book, I'm Thinking of Ending Things, a lot more, so I'm thinking maybe he's not my favorite author, because I felt this way about We Spread as well, his more recent book, where it was just kind of a middle of the road read for me. Then I read Maeve Fly by CJ Leede. This is one I was a little bit nervous to read because I knew it had been described as more of a graphic horror, like a splatter punk, more like violent and stuff like that, and gross. And it definitely is, but I'll say it definitely could have been worse. So yeah, it could have been worse, but there definitely were a lot of disturbing moments that made me uncomfortable. This is about a woman named Maeve Fly, that's her name. She works at Disney World as a princess. She, you know, is described to look very like cute and innocent, but as we are reading about her, hearing her, you know, internal thoughts, we find out she's a very actually messed up, dark individual. She kills people. she loves Halloween and a lot of gruesome stuff. At first, I wasn't totally sold on this book. She was giving I'm not like other girls, and it was coming across kind of like cringy, and I wasn't really like loving her character. As I said, she's like a psycho, so it was not super like relatable or anything like that. But we're seeing, you know, her relationship with her friend, with her grandma, with this man that comes in and is kind of like a love interest for her, and I was interested in that and kind of like the romance that was involved. But I'll say by the end, it completely sold me. I feel like the end was very intense. I actually finally came to have some more like empathy for Maeve. I just had like a really kind of intense reaction to the ending. Like I felt very upset with what happened. I really cared about what ended up happening. The commentary finally kind of came through for me. It's described as being kind of like American Psycho, only like gender swapped, obviously, as Maeve is a woman, and I just thought it was kind of interesting what this book had to say. So definitely interested in reading more from this author, but I don't know if I absolutely love reading about the kind of like gross and upsetting content a lot. Like I don't think I want to pick up like splatterpunk books a lot, but I think this was definitely a great book to read in October for Halloween. It is Halloween in this book. It takes place over like Halloween weekend or whatever, so a great pick to read in October. Yeah, glad I read it. Another thriller I read that had been on my TBR for a long time is The Last Mrs. Parrish by Liv Constantine. Unfortunately, I only ended up giving this a 3-star rating. It was another thriller that was a little disappointing for me. I wish could have been better. I think maybe because this is a little bit older now, there's been books since then that have had similar premises that I've read, so this one didn't really like stick the landing as much as I would have liked it to. We have a main character who we're following in the first half of the book. We know she did some like messed up stuff, some illegal stuff, and she's kind of running away from her previous life, and she sets her sight on the Parrish family. She pretends to befriend Mrs. Parrish, Daphne was her name, to get in with this family, and her ultimate goal is to steal Daphne's husband, Mr. Parrish, and become, you know, the new Mrs. Parrish, who is super rich. Like this guy's like a billionaire. So I've seen this kind of story before, infiltrating a family, trying to steal the husband. Like I have seen that premise before. Maybe this was the original one to do it, and props to them, I guess, for that. But because of that, because we know the main character's motives, the first half was okay. Then we switch into the second half and we have Daphne Parrish's point of view. This is where like some twists kind of get revealed, but then I actually didn't really like the second half as much. There was so much, I don't want to spoil it, but the certain kind of thing that was going on was kind of upsetting to read, and it got to be like repetitive. Like it wasn't like a good upsetting, it was just kind of like, oh, another scene exploring this topic, like we get it. And then I just felt like, you know, the twists are kind of being slowly revealed where none of them were like that shocking. So I just gave it a 3. I'm glad I kind of finally read it since it's been on my TBR for a while, but it definitely was overhyped for me. Next thriller I read was My Sister the Serial Killer, and excuse me if I don't pronounce this name correctly, but the author is Oyinkan Braithwaite. This book takes place in Nigeria. We're following a girl or a woman who is a nurse there, and her sister is a serial killer. So basically her sister has killed multiple men that she has been involved with, and every time she calls up her sister, it's like, hey, can you help me get rid of the body? And of course, because this girl is a loyal older sister, she always helps out her younger sister. But now the younger sister seems to have her sights on her work crush, the doctor at her hospital that she works with, that she feels she is in love with. So now she's like, oh crap, like I don't want my sister to murder this man that I have a relationship with. So it's just really exploring the relationship between the two sisters. Overall, I enjoyed it. The writing and everything, the story was very interesting. But the younger sister, her name, I think it's Ayula or something like that. Like she was just pissing me off so much, because I'm like, girl, stop killing people, stop dragging your sister into it. And the younger sister also was just that kind of type of character that's like very pretty, and so all the boys love her. Everyone just loves her and thinks she can do no wrong. She's this angel, I guess, kind of similar to the concept that Maeve Fly was exploring, of like pretty privilege and like looking sweet and innocent, and how that can like help you in life. So it just was really frustrating seeing our main girl have to deal with this, and kind of the burden of being the eldest daughter, which is obviously a really real concept. I'm the eldest daughter, so you know, definitely found it interesting. I think in a lot of cultures, I guess Nigerian culture in this specific book, like there's just so much pressure on the eldest sibling or the eldest daughter to be the responsible one to take care of their younger siblings. Definitely not fair in my opinion, and so this book was just like really pissing me off stop. But ultimately I really liked it. I just had to rate it like a little bit lower because it was just kind of annoying me, but obviously that was the point of the book. So I gave it 3.5 stars. Next up, I read One Perfect Couple by Ruth Ware. I of course have read all of Ruth Ware's books, rated them between, you know, 4.5 all the way down to maybe like 2 stars. It's kind of a wide range. Her last book I definitely was disappointed with, and I had heard not the best things about this book going in, so I went in with lower expectations, but am pleased to report that I actually ended up rating it 4 stars, and I was pleasantly surprised and overall really enjoyed it. I read it in 2 days. As always, her writing is really easy to read, easy to just sit there and consume like in one or 2 afternoons. The plot in this is that we're following a couple. The main girl is named Lila and she's dating this guy named Nico. So Lila is a scientist. She has, you know, more of a grown-up, mature job, but she is still going contract to contract, so it's not like the best situation like financially. But her boyfriend Nico is even worse off because he's like a wannabe actor in London. He's just not really finding the best roles. He hasn't really blown up or anything yet. He's like a struggling actor basically. So he approaches her because he has been asked to go on this reality show. It's like a dating reality show on an island, and it's for real couples to go on and then compete to win money and blah blah blah. So he convinces her to go on because his agent is like, oh, this will be good exposure for you, even though it's not really an acting gig. Like, you'll get to be in front of the audience, you'll be on TV, it could really like be a good job for you. So he convinces her to go on the show with him. So they go out, I think, to an island in Indonesia to film this show, which I did like that initial premise of the reality dating show. I've read a few books with that, you know, premise, and it always is quite fun. So I would recommend it if you're also into that kind of thing, but quickly it does switch away from that premise when this storm hits on this island and all of the like crew, the ship gets like washed away, and so our main characters, I think there's maybe like 8 of them, are like stranded on this island, and it becomes more of like a survival story. So when I heard that, I wasn't really loving it because I'm like, well, where's the thriller aspect, or like where's the mystery and where's the twist gonna be if they're just trying to like survive on an island? Like, that doesn't sound that interesting to me. However, it seems like one of the people they are trapped on this island with might be a serial killer, so that is where the intrigue comes in, the thrillery aspect of it. And something that was a little bit of a bias for me, but a reason I really enjoyed this book personally, is that one of our main characters trapped on the island is a type 1 diabetic, which of course, as you can see from the name of my channel, I also am a type 1 diabetic, and I'm always looking to read books with that representation because it's a pretty rare condition, and you know, not a lot of books focus on it or have characters with the condition, and a lot of times when they do, it's not an accurate representation and it pisses me off. But I'm happy to report that this was a good representation. It actually was a major part of the story, not something where like if you don't care about diabetes or you don't know about it that you're gonna get like annoyed with it or anything, but it is a pretty big part of the book. With type 1 diabetes, you are insulin reliant, so there's the threat of like maybe her insulin's gonna run out or stop working. There's a lot of talk of her devices that she's wearing, which is very accurate. I wear multiple devices to help manage my diabetes. There just seemed to be a lot of care put into the representation, and Ruth Ware does mention in the acknowledgements that she had some help from some diabetics. So I really appreciate that, and it just kind of added an extra layer to this book for me, and it's why I rated it 4 stars and I enjoyed it so much. So I understand why some people might not have enjoyed it as much if they don't care about type 1 diabetes and it doesn't really mean anything to them. But hopefully if you did read this, you can like learn a little bit more about the type 1 condition. It was not like a perfect representation. It's not like our main character had the disease, so it wasn't like the absolute forefront, but it still was good. And then all the other elements of the book I did enjoy as well. Maybe it was like a bit dragged out, a bit repetitive, but I ultimately ended up liking what went on. So yeah, nice to have another win from Ruth. All right, then we have my favorite book that I read this month. It was The Last House on Needless Street by Catriona Ward. I gave this one 4.5 stars, so close to a 5-star. I didn't know if it was gonna go in that direction starting out. This book is a horror. It is about basically a man named Ted we're seeing from his point of view, and then we're seeing from his cat's point of view. And those are like the two main points of view we're seeing. The narration at first is very kind of confusing. We're jumping around in time. We're also wondering like, why is this cat having this point of view? Like, what is going on with this? We eventually get a few other perspectives throughout the book as well, but it starts out just very confusing. And there's a lot of mystery of like, what is going on with this man? Is he a serial killer? As we're learning about some missing girls and things like that. This is a book where you really cannot say much about it because you don't want to give anything away. Like, I actually don't even think I can say anything more about this because I don't want to spoil it. But as I said, I wasn't completely sold at first, but as the book kept going and things kept unraveling and you're finding out more about these characters, you know, especially the cat character Olivia, like, love her. It just was such a moving book. The reveals were not even the most shocking. Like, I don't know. You can kind of put things together as they go, which I know I said with the other books that I've talked about. I didn't like that. I prefer to have like a really shocking twist that comes out of nowhere, I guess, sometimes. This had, I don't know, it was a good mixture. I just liked how everything came together. It ended up being just a very moving story. I don't think I'm able to like get across like how I feel properly. Obviously there's a little bit of something missing. I couldn't quite give it that full 5-star rating. Something was holding me back, but it was so close to 5 stars. I just really appreciate this book. I have to read more from this author, and I just have to highly recommend that you read this book. It is so much more than what you think going in. But of course there are definitely going to be trigger warnings. As I said, it is a horror, and this one really does feel like a horror. There's some really horrific things going on here. So highly recommend, but I don't know, maybe check out trigger warnings, although those might be spoilery. The last book I read this month is Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. So I actually started this book a few months ago, like in the summer, and I did read most of it then, and then I took a break because I had to focus on my TBRs, but I did read the last 300 pages this month. Obviously this is the 5th Harry Potter book. It is my least favorite movie. In case you don't know, like, I grew up watching the movies and loving them, but this is my first time reading the books. So it's been a really cool experience for me to be comparing them. As I said, this is my least favorite movie, but I did overall really enjoy this book and think it's probably better than the movie. I'm enjoying seeing the differences between the two and the extra detail that is added into this book. Didn't give it a 5-star though. I think maybe the fact that I broke up my reading experience like negatively impacted it a little bit. Also, this is a book where Umbridge takes over the school, and I just hate that woman, and I just feel like, you know, having to read about how she's tormenting the school and the students was like not an enjoyable experience. There's also certain things in here I didn't really care about either, like the giant, and like, I'm sorry, I love Hagrid, but like I don't really care about his story in this book. I also am just really upset about the death that happens in this book. I don't love it. Also, Dumbledore kind of pisses me off with how he doesn't have great communication with Harry and is really separating himself or like distancing himself from Harry, which he of course explains why he's doing that, but I just don't love that situation. I think Dumbledore could have done things differently. But anyways, overall still enjoying reading these books. 4 stars for this one. Excited to keep going because the 6th movie is one of my favorites, so I'm looking forward to reading that book. So that is my October wrap up, the 12 books I read this month. Please let me know your thoughts below on any of these books. Let me know how your reading month went in October, and as I said, if you have any like witchy recommendations for me, please let me know. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you next time. Bye!